Hello everyone, this is Trevor with Mando Deck Tech, and today we're going to be taking another look at the Blue Han deck that I've been playtesting over the last few weeks. Now, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to the channel. All of the content that we'll be putting out on this channel is going to be getting us ready for the planetary qualifier season. Me and my friends have been playtesting a lot of decks, and we're signed up for the Greenville, South Carolina planetary qualifier. That's a mouthful. So we were fortunate enough to grab seats there, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be playtesting every deck we possibly can get our hands on that is meta decks and things that we're calling rogues, decks that are maybe on the cusp of being meta but not quite there yet. And we're running all of these decks, what we're basically calling a gauntlet, where we take a deck and we play it against everything we can think of in the format. A lot of games on Carabast, and then also in-person games. What I will be doing is I'll be showing you some of the decks that we're playtesting. I'm also going to show you some of the results of those playtests. This week I do travel for a living, and this last week I was in Raleigh, North Carolina. And while I was there, I got to play some live games at Game Theory up in Wake Forest. Now I will be going over those playtest results later on in the video, but just shout out to the guys that I met up in Game Theory. They were super cool, and hopefully I'll get to play with you guys again soon. All right, now let's move to the deck. So I had built a deck previously. I have another video called Jedi Han before, I guess, Blue Han kind of took off with the name. And it's a close version of this, but after I've play tested a lot and after seeing some of the results of Gen Con, we've made some changes. This is a variation, a very close variation of one of the decks that we saw at Gen Con do extremely well. And so as we look at the Blue Han deck, there's a lot of little tweaks that have been changed into the deck. Most notably, having two Tex main, it gives an amazing amount of reach for this deck, late game, to be able to bring back some of those, things that you've resourced earlier. It's a great call to have Tech in the deck. There's been many games where bringing Chewbacca out smuggled has been absolutely game changing. So having Tech as an option as well to bring in or to drop and bring back maybe the Luke or somebody that you had to, resource early game. So Tech is a huge upgrade. Now, a lot of people are playing Mace Windu. I've been playing with Mace Windu. I've been playing without. Right now, I'm testing it without. I've been running one Rey. I feel that Rey should be good in this deck. I'm very undecided. There are games that I get Rey out and she does really, really well. There's other games that I feel like she's a little slow. So Rey may be coming out back in for Mace Windu. Pillage is another card that I've been playtesting a lot. I've had it main, I've had it in the sideboard. I feel that 2 main right now is definitely the way to go. There are several games, and we'll get into that later, where I feel like Pillage was just absolutely game breaking against certain matchups. So this is where we are right now with the deck. I'm going to talk through some of the testing that I've done, but right now, if you just want to take a screenshot, here's the deck. There's a lot of cool little things that I have found with this deck. Kanan Jarrus was a card I was kind of meh on at first, but now seeing the power of getting him out on the second turn using Han's ability as a 4/3, if they don't handle it, it's a card that aggro decks like Sabine has to deal with the moment it comes down. The healing can really mess up their plan. Also, getting Force Throw online that quick can cause a lot of problems for decks. So I feel this deck is extremely good. I would consider it a top 3, maybe top 4 deck in the format right now. It's very good against Sabine. It's good against Boba. I wouldn't say it dominates either one of those decks, but it puts up a good fight and can win a lot of games. And it's very good against the control match because of the discard elements that you have between K2SO, Force Throw, and then Pillage. Also, late game, a lot of decks just can't handle Krayt Dragon. Dropping that a turn earlier with Han Solo's ability is extremely good, and there's a lot of games where the dragon comes out and the game is over. So with that, let me move over and show you, this is something I talked about in my Gen Con video, but this is the Gauntlet. So these are the decks that we're targeting right now of things that we're playtesting against, and we're trying to keep up with all the statistics that we have as we run into these decks. This list may change here or there. I've been seeing, and we have the Gauntlet, which I consider meta decks, and then we have the Rogues, which is the ones that are kind of on the side and maybe can like slide into the Gauntlet. At this point, Han Blue, I consider it a Rogue deck. I think at this we have to move that over into the gauntlet. I'll update this for the next list because that's definitely a meta deck at this point. On the meta side of it, you've got all the different versions of Sabine. Sabine ECL, I think, is the one that we're seeing the most, and I'm playtesting that the most as well. Aggro Boba or Boba Tempo, I think Boba Yellow is the deck that we're seeing the most right now. I have seen some Boba Green still. I think it's still a very good deck. Kira Control might be, again, one of the top 3 decks that we should be playtesting against right now. It's a very good deck. Palpatine, I've seen a lot of different Palpatine decks, and I've seen with playtesting a lot of different things. It's kind of all over the place with the results. I'll kind of show you some of that here in a minute. As far as Han, the yellow Han deck and this deck, blue Han, is an absolute slobber knocker of a fight. I mean, they really go at each other, and it's a lot of fun to see this matchup go. Vader Green, I've done extremely well against that deck here. And Krennic, and Iden, I have not been able to see an Iden deck come across yet, but Krennic, I feel right now Kira is just the better version of that type of deck. As far as the rogues go, I still have Tarkin Space on here. That's like my little love child. I love that deck, and I think it's getting better with some of the new tech that we're putting into it. I may do a follow-up video with that. I think that deck, I don't think it's meta, but I do think it's something we should definitely still be taking a look at. And then we have a lot of the other decks here. Ray Discard, been doing really well against that deck. Bosk Bounty, haven't really played tested against that one too much. Surprisingly, I've been seeing a whole lot of Kylo on Carabas recently, and I've had mixed results. Kylo is one of those decks that if they get the hand and they kind of vomit everything out, and if it works out, it's really hard to stand up to. If you get a couple of key plays in, it really shuts that deck down. Hondo Blue, surprisingly, I've been seeing more and more of this after Gen Con. I think it's a solid control deck that we need to take a look at. Cad Bane, I feel there's so much potential with this deck. We're just not really seeing a lot of results with it yet. With that, let's go take a look at some of the playtest results. All right, so what I've done here is I have taken, I'm a numbers guy. I just freaking love numbers. I want to go through and say, okay, every single time I log into Carabas, I started doing this recently over the last few days, so there's a lot of data I didn't capture before I started doing this. But I want to see, these are all the Carabas games I've played recently, and then I have a section for live games and how they did it. I'm also starting to put notes in, because I feel like a lot of times we can play test a deck, play 100 games with it, and you just say, well, I feel good against this, or I don't feel good about that, but what are the actual numbers? Like, what's the actual data? You know, there are a lot of times you can say, oh, I'm really good against Ray. Then you look down and go, well, you're 3-3 against it, so maybe it's not as dominating as you thought it was. So these are the things that we've kind of taken a look at, and then I put little notes on here as well. Some of the things to take a look at here, Sabine ECL on Carabas, I fought it 4 times, I've beaten it 3 times. I feel like I've got a really good fight against that deck. It's only 4 games, I know, but I feel right now that's a pretty good matchup for me, particularly with the fact that you've got Yoda, you've got so much control, and you can also bring back a lot of restore. But these are the early results. You can take a look at it. Like I said, this is only over the last day or two. What I really want to talk about are going to be the live results of playing up at Game Theory. Played against a Vader Green deck, went 2-0 against that deck. Great player, good guy, but I crushed with Pillage. Between Force Throw and Pillage, I was able to strip his hand. There were both games I got him down to where he had 2 cards in hand, and both of them were very, very huge plays, overwhelming barrage or some of the bigger units, and I was able to strip them out of his hand. So again, I think Vader Green's a good matchup from what I've seen so far. Just with the amount of discard this deck can bring is really good. I did get to play a Han Yellow deck after the event was over. A guy there had a really good Han Yellow deck. He was really good with the deck. Only got to play it once. I did take that game, but it was a long fought game because we were both fighting in and out of each other's smuggling in different things. It was a fun game. Did play against Kira Green. I think this is a tough matchup. I did go 2-0 against this one. Again, Pillage did a lot of work in that matchup. Now, it was basically 3 rounds. In the last round, I played a player there. I can't remember his name, but he was playing Java Red. And I had kind of seen that he was really good with it. So I was very curious about it, and I was really unfamiliar with the matchup, to be totally honest. And we played 3 full games, and I mean, it went down to the wire. And I feel that I lost the match. I did make a misplay on a Jabba flip turn, and I wasn't running Fell the Dragon. And that really, I think, is a matchup that I really needed that card. So now you'll see I've got one main, one on the board. That's a deck, it kind of ramps up and plays a lot of big stuff, big Rancor, Crate Dragons, really big stuff. And he was able to kind of get there before I could in some of those games. But it was a great game. And I think this is a really good lesson here, is that while I'm playing the meta deck, and Jabba Red is definitely not meta right now, here's a player that when I was talking to him, he had been playing Jabba Red since the set came out. He was very familiar with it, and we've seen this in the past where somebody takes a deck to a tournament, and it's a little under the radar, and they're just really, really good at it, and they've really teched it out. We saw this in set 1. We saw people show up with a Chirrut deck and do really well. In fact, there was one tournament the guy did really well with the Chewbacca deck. It was just like the perfect thing built for this scenario, and this guy was really good with it. So props to him playing Jabba Red. It made me actually sit there and go, maybe we should take a look at this. It's really, really good. So I think that was a fun match for sure. So that was my time up at Game Theory. I had a good time playing those guys up. As far as playtest goes, the Han Blue Mirror. Now, that's one game I do want to talk about. I've played it 6 times. I'm 3-3. It does seem to be a race to the dragon. The games that I've played, it feels like whoever gets to the dragon wins. So I think it's very interesting how that match plays out. There's a lot of times where whoever can get the Luke to stick can win that game. And it's funny, those games, I feel that every one of those games I've played has been completely one-sided. So it wasn't ever a case of going back and forth. The early testing was whoever got control and got to that dragon or got to that big hit would win the game. So I think it's a very tough matchup, but I think having like certain cards ready to go and knowing Fell the Dragon has to be held or Rival's Fall has to be held for those late game bombs. But it's hard to do against that matchup because you're both pillaging each other's hands. So I think tech is really good to be able to kind of maybe protect those cards and bring them out later. It's a tough matchup, and it's definitely one that we'll have to be playing more of. There's a lot of O1s here against decks that I hadn't seen before. Kylo decks are kind of all over the place. Boba Yellow, Boba ECL. Like I said, I've played this game more, this deck more. This is just what I have captured in the last day or two. Palp Yellow seems to be a fun deck to play against as well. That is a hard matchup for the flip turn. You've really got to know exactly when to hit that flip just right. And I think the discard package is just a must in that matchup. So these are the notes. This is how I'm playtesting. When I do these videos, I'll kind of have more info, more data, but I want to encourage everyone out there when you're playing your decks, keep notes. Know what you're good against. And also, like, one of the things, too, is that, like, when you're playing on Carabas, a lot of times, you're just playing game 1. You're not playing sideboard games. So, a lot of times I'm looking at this and go, what would I sideboard? And then how would that game work out if it was a sideboard? So something me and my friends are going to do is get together and start playing best of 3s and stuff. But initially, this is the data that I have. I think this is a solid deck. I think this is definitely something, if you are getting ready for a major tournament, I think this is kind of what you have to do to prepare for these tournaments and have success. So with that, I appreciate you. Thank you for sticking around, and please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time.